What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking Terrifier 3, which is, well, it's a sequel to Terrifier 2. I doubt many people are seeking out reviews for this film without knowing about this franchise, but just in case you're one of those people, basically the first Terrifier was about a deranged clown named Art who goes on a killing spree and brutally murders a bunch of people, and that's pretty much it. Anyone who's watched quite a few of my videos will probably know that I'm a huge fan of the horror genre. It is my favorite in all of film. But quite honestly, I've never been a fan of these so-called splatter films. Some might call them torture porn. You know, things like The Human Centipede, Hostel, the Saw sequels, anything that's just gore and torture for 90 minutes with no underlying themes or anything to really justify its existence. I think the first Terrifier definitely falls into that category. I watched it for the first time a couple of years ago, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. That's literally all it is gore porn. I found it to be pretty distasteful. I mean, the practical effects that they use to present the gore are impressive, yes, for sure, but I need more than that in a movie, and I'm not going to sit here and judge people who enjoy that stuff. If you like the first Terrifier for what it is, all the more power to you, but I think most true connoisseurs of film would agree that it's just a little distasteful if that's all your film has going for it. But a few weeks ago, in preparation for watching this one, I watched the second Terrifier, and to my surprise, it was actually significantly better. It had an actual story, actual characters that you can follow all the way through the film, and they were surprisingly likable. We're introduced to this lead character, Sienna, played by Lauren Lavera, and I genuinely liked this character, and she's clearly becoming well loved by the community, and there are talks of her becoming the next big final girl of this decade, and I can't argue against that. She's incredibly fierce, decently well written, and very well acted. This second movie, what made it better for me is that in addition to having characters and an actual story, it has this 80s throwback style in terms of the vibe, the synth soundtrack, the grainy look, and this production design that just screams throwback to slashers of that time period. It also has some very fantastical elements, and I want to repeat that the gore was good from day one, and that stuff only continues to progress and look better and better as the budget increases. I mean, the innards, the bones, the flesh in this series, they all look so real, and that's because director Damien Leone worked in the effects department before he started making these films. And this is still a relatively low budget film. It was made on like a $2 million budget or something like that. That's very small by Hollywood standards, but it's still a massive increase from the second one, which was, I think, like $250,000. That's incredibly low for the level of production value that you actually get on screen. I'm very impressed by that. And whereas the first Terrifier didn't really have any directorial prowess to show off, this one has some decent stuff in it. I see you with that split diopter there, Damien. And I can't talk about this series or this film without talking about David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown. He's become somewhat of an icon in the community as well. I don't agree with the sentiment that he's up there with Freddy or Jason or any of the other big greats out there. I don't think the character is mainstream enough for that because, truth be told, this series is very gory. It's extremely intense and not for the faint of heart. If you can't stomach gore, you should not watch these films because they will upset you. And, you know, I'm pretty seasoned when it comes to this stuff. There were even a few times watching all of these films in which I had to kind of, I didn't cover my eyes, but I definitely winced because it is very intense and the graphic violence is portrayed in a realistic way because these practical effects look so good. But Thornton as this character, he's great, and he's a big reason why the things that work in these films do work. He's surprisingly funny, particularly in this film, while also being terrifying. He is a clown after all. And they do a good job of combining the basic clown antics. You know, he carries around a bag with all kinds of trinkets and tricks that he can perform. But he can also snap on a dime if you don't laugh at his jokes and dismember you in a horrifically grotesque way. The mannerisms, the reactions to what people have to say about him are spot on. I really enjoyed the character in this film at times. Terrifier 3 definitely has a better blend of humor and horror, and I appreciate that. There's an element of camp that I definitely enjoyed. All I'm going to say is there's a scene in a bar in which Art the Clown meets a Santa Claus impersonator, and it was just hilarious. Chef's kiss. But you can see that Damien Leone has a sincere love for horror and for this age that he's trying to pay homage to. I saw visual references in this movie to The Shining to Black Christmas, which is very on point considering this is a film that is set during Christmas. There are elements that reminded me of Hellraiser. All right, let's move on to the story because I haven't really talked about that at all yet. This movie picks up 5 years after the events of Terrifier 2. Sienna is checking herself out of a psychiatric hospital to go and live with her aunt and uncle. She's suffering from a lot of PTSD from the previous film. Her brother Jonathan is attending college. Their relationship is a bit strained. And I like that they give her some meat to work with. Again, I think Lauren Lavera does a great job with the material. It did feel a little cliched, though, that they give her this PTSD arc, which is very similar to something from, let's say, Halloween 2018 with Jamie Lee Curtis going through her PTSD, seeing Michael Myers, thinking Michael Myers is back, and nobody believes her. It's the same kind of situation here, and it felt a little bit redundant of a lot of characters we've seen in other films in this genre. And Sienna and Art have separate storylines that don't really converge until late in the film. And I think there is too much fluff and extra kill scenes just to beef up the body count. Some of them definitely didn't need to be there. And speaking of the kill scenes, there are times where it transcends the usual blood and guts and becomes actual tedious torture, for lack of a better word. There's a difference between having gory death scenes versus lingering on the suffering of the characters as they slowly bleed out from the dozens of horrific injuries that they've received. It gets to the point where it's no longer fun and it just makes you feel gross inside, at least for me. There's one in particular in the third act that just pushed it too far for me, and I understand that's the selling point of this franchise for a lot of people. What depraved levels are they going to take it to next? But I don't know, I still think you need to put limits on how much you show. And like, especially when it's not going the campy route, when it's playing it serious and you're watching these characters that you like just being tormented. It takes it too far. It is on the longer side too when talking about fluff. I mean, the second Terrifier, which I did like, was still too long. It was like 2 hours and 20 minutes. This one's like 15 minutes shorter than that, which I appreciate. I think they get the pacing better a little bit. And when it comes to the supernatural stuff that they introduced in the second film, which I appreciated because it kind of added to the 80s throwback vibe, we don't get answers to all the questions that the second film raised, which was a little bit disappointing to me. There's clearly some themes of fate going on here, as Sienna has been bestowed this sword that grants her the ability to fight back against Art by her father. It does dive into that a little bit, but without spoiling things, I was a little let down by the fact that we don't get clear answers. And there was a point in the third act while watching this in which I sat back and I was like, okay, I know that a fourth film has already been confirmed. Where else can we really go with this? I think they need to kind of work towards wrapping it up. I know they're not going to do that because I'm sure these films are making a massive profit off of their tiny budgets, considering the fan base is growing to such a large extent. But I think the series will start to get repetitive after the fourth one, unless they really, kind of work towards some form of a conclusion for these characters, because they are doing a very cyclical story arc in which Sienna and Art eventually come face to face. There's a confrontation, and they leave things kind of open for a continuation. Just as another quick nitpick too, there's a major event that happens off screen, and I don't even know if it's a bait and switch or if it actually happened, but if so, just a bizarre creative choice. I think this is the best Terrifier film yet. I was genuinely shocked by how much I liked this film, because this stuff, once again, usually isn't my cup of tea, but they've done a good job of building up this lead character. She has all of the qualities that I like in a final girl, so if you have a strong lead character, the fact that most of the side characters are there to die doesn't matter as much. Is Terrifier 3 high art? Absolutely not. And once again, it leans too far into the gore and torment for me at times. But for the most part, I enjoyed it, and I think it's worth a watch if you can stomach this stuff. So I'm going to give Terrifier 3 3.5 stars. As always, I'm very curious to hear what people have to say in the comments about this, so let me know if you do see Terrifier 3, what you think of it, and which one of the three is the best. I'm aware that Art the Clown has been in other films in the past by Damien Leone, such as, I think All Hallows Eve is the name of it, or it might be a short, I can't remember. As always, thanks for clicking on this video. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.